Mother's Day is a time to appreciate the people who hold us to a high standard. At Ritual, we apply that same philosophy to your health. We are a mom-founded company on a mission to bring a high standard to the supplement industry through traceable science and clinical research you can actually trust. We've done the hard work, investing in gold standard clinical research and traceable ingredients so you can feel confident in your routine. When we say traceable, that means you can see what it is, where it's from, and why it's in there. This year, skip the flowers and gift the moms in your life or yourself a new ritual. Whether it's our flagship Essential Multivitamin or our 3-in-1 Gut Support, Ritual is the science-backed routine that actually shows up for you. Experience a high standard of science-backed health with 35% off when you bundle at ritual.com/podcast. That's 35% off at ritual.com/podcast. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is Believe.
Welcome to Orioles on the Verge. This is Zach Spettin, joined as always by Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens. And on tonight's episode, we're going to look back at the best prospect performances in the month of April, as well as break down the beginning of the FCL season. We're going to talk about some of the players that stand out down there as one of the Orioles' short season levels gets underway. But first, this episode is brought to you by IQ Bar, exclusive snack, hydration, and coffee sponsor. IQ Bar protein bars, IQ Mix hydration mixes, and IQ Joe mushroom coffees are the delicious, low-sugar, brain and body fuel you need to win your day. The Ultimate Sampler Pack is a great way to try all IQ Bar products and flavors. You get 9 IQ bars, 8 IQ Mix sticks, and 4 IQ Joe sticks. All IQ Bar ingredients are clean label certified, entirely free from gluten, dairy, soy, GMOs, and artificial ingredients. All IQ Bar products are packed with clean, delicious ingredients that keep you physically and mentally fit, like magnesium, lion's mane, and more. With over 25,000 5-star reviews and counting, more people than ever are fueling their busy lifestyles with IQ Bar's brain and body boosting bars, hydration mixes, and mushroom coffees. Their Ultimate Sampler Pack includes all 3. IQ Bars become part of my daily routines, whether it's starting my morning with IQ Joe, grabbing an IQ Bar or IQ Mix to refuel, or rehydrate after a hard workout. And right now, IQ Bar is offering our special podcast listeners 20% off all IQ Bar products, including the Ultimate Sampler Pack, plus free shipping. To get your 20% off, text MLB to 64,000. Text MLB to 64,000. That's MLB to 64,000. Message and data rates may apply. See terms for details. And of course, if you're watching us on YouTube, you can get the info there from our lower third graphic. Now, we are going to talk a little bit about the FCL Orioles as their season got underway this past weekend. But I do want to point to a piece that recently ran on our Substack, oriolesontheverge.substack.com, where Nick put together the all-prospect team for the month of April. And, of course, that just takes into account April performances, so the first few games of May are not included in that sample size. But you reading the article this morning, Nick, I was really struck by how well some of these players performed, and it's a pretty interesting team you put together.
Yeah, like I said earlier, if you're watching live earlier, a rare free weekend, so I had a little extra time and thought I'd try something new. I know, Bob, in the past you've done the 3 up, 3 down stuff, but I don't know if we've ever put together like an article or like this, where we're doing like every month. And maybe we used to do these on the podcast side early on, I can't remember, but I don't know, I feel like we haven't tried this before. I'll try it out. Also published it on Sunday, which I usually don't try to publish stuff on the weekend, but it looks like it's doing pretty well over the last day or two. So maybe this becomes a more regular thing, especially with the FCL starting now and the Dominican Summer League starting in a couple of days. We'll have lots of new players. But yeah, this is a good, nice, easy layout of, there's a lot of really impressive performances to start the year down there. And some guys like Judd Fabian and Cameron Weston. No, I'm not going to sit here and read off the whole list, obviously. Go check it out. But guys like Judd Fabian and Cameron Weston, who I think we more talked so in the Patreon-only Top 50 update, quietly having really, really solid years down in Norfolk, showing a lot of growth in certain areas. I gave it to Cameron Weston over Jerron Watch Brown because I put the note in there. Jerron Watch Brown did his in rehab outings. That doesn't count. Cameron Weston got the strikeout rate up to 31%. 22 strikeouts, just 8 walks, and a 3.38 ERA through his first 16 innings. So love to see that, but a lot of 2025 draft picks, a couple 2024 draft picks showing up well. A lot of guys who we didn't really see much of anything from last year on this list. Your DJ Laytons, your Braylon Whitakers, your Anderson De Los Santoses. So, yeah, fun little piece to put together and show that this team, bunch of guys hitting well, and even some guys like Ethan Anderson hitting well. Didn't make this team, but probably deserves so. Yeah, fun to put together.
Yeah, it's a fun exercise. I never put it in article format, but actually over at Baltimore Sports and Life message board, giving them another shout out, our original stomping grounds. I would just, for the fun of it, put together like a all month team. It is a fun exercise. So yeah, it would be fun to do this once a month and go over this, because you start to see trends, and you just basically, you could see even the best players have months where they are not good, and then they'll have months where they look unstoppable. I'm excited to see Creed Willems keep it up. He got off to a great start, then he slumped, and then he's really just come into his own. I feel like he's been pretty steady, even on Sunday. I know it doesn't count towards the stats or this list, but went 0 for 2, but he walked twice, didn't strike out. So just getting comfortable at AAA, and AAA is not the deepest team right now, especially because the Orioles have had to pull from their roster and just injuries as well. But there are some interesting players like Creed Willems, Fabian. And luckily, Reed Trimble is rehabbing now and should be back relatively soon. Yeah, it's a fun list. Ike Irish killing it. Again, I don't want to just list off every name, but the high A pitchers, JT Quinn and Joseph Jirwa, of course, they're on here after the way they started their professional careers. It's a really fun list. I'm excited to see how it evolves over the season. Is Aaron Estrada? We talked about how he had a slow start, and then look, just like Samuel Basayo, he had a really good week this past week. So hopefully, who else is struggling? I can't think of anyone.
Martinez.
Yeah, that breakout might be happening right now. Yeah, so it's a fun list, and you did a good job putting it together.
Yeah, I was really impressed by this list. Just to shout out Cameron Weston real quick. I think that the way he's pitched this year has been really encouraging. And what's interesting is the stuff has not necessarily changed. I think that it's just a second go-around AAA, getting used to the baseball, getting used to the strike zone. He's kind of doing what he's always done, which is just mix in that broad arsenal that he has and seemingly be able to throw in any given outing at least 3 or 4 pitches for strikes consistently, and that's allowed him to have a lot of success. And one guy that we haven't talked about yet, Nate George, is on the list, and I was very encouraged by the fact that George, the first week or so, was not that good for him at the plate, but he has rebounded very nicely, and I think that that's really a good sign because, let's face it, this is a guy that I don't think has really had a slump to this point in his young career, so to see him overcome that little bit of a rough patch early on and put up the kind of April that he did, 111 WRC plus, 11% walk rate, 12 for 14 stolen bases. It was really encouraging.
Yeah, Nate George has shown a lot. Like I said, that was our top 50 update. The way he turned on a ball and pulled it for a home run. I think it's the only home run he's got, but hasn't hit for a ton of extra bases yet. But just the ability to do that was not there last year. So that's really nice to see. And on the Cameron Weston tip, I did dive into him a couple weeks ago and maybe it's changed a little bit, but this is April 25th. I put this together. It looks like his sinker has more hop to it. It has a plus 1.6 IVB, plus 1 horizontal break. So that's moving more. It's in the zone more often, and he's using it less. And his sweeper has more sweep. He's using it more. He's mixing his pitches really well, and his swing and strike percentage is up 5% from what it was last year. And he's getting more chase, more whiff. So definitely a little bit of changes, but I think it's just he's got a better game plan and he's being more effective with what he's doing out there.
Yeah. One more note on Nate George. I'm glad you brought him up. It's just we take this weekend's games. It's a 107 WRC plus now, but he's still hitting almost 300. And yeah, he only has 4 extra base hits, the 3 doubles, and the 1 home run. But to be hitting almost 300, the strikeout rates are up a tick, but he's still maintaining a 10, 11% walk rate. I love to see that. And you can see that stolen base number is now even better. 15 for 17 in stolen base attempts. It's so much more controlled out there. And this is exactly what we talked about all last year, is that just that natural growth, being in more games, getting more experience, letting the game come to him a little bit more, all those cliche things. Like you can play with your hair on fire a lot, but you can also rein it in and do so productively. And I think watching Nate George so far this year in high A, he's definitely doing that. And I see no reason as to why. He's still 19, 10, yeah, he's still 19 for another month. I see no reason why at some point, maybe in a month, maybe it'll be 2 months from now, but at some point this year, he has a week where we have to have an episode where we just talk about Nate George, because he pops like 3 home runs, hits almost 500, walks 6, 7 times, strikes out like twice. He's had a week already where he only struck out once. That was another key thing too. Like Nate George is showing some real growth. So if you're looking at just his baseline number there and saying it's fine, but like what happens like Nate George that we saw last year, those explosive numbers, I think you're seeing a lot of productive growth there with Nate George that's going to lead to something pretty big second half of the year.
That's a good point. Were there any players that were like just missed or honorable mentions?
There's one guy that I wanted to put on here. I'm like, I got to add a DH. I could slip him on here, but you're not leaving Victor Figueroa off this thing. And you got to put Ike Irish at first base. I want to look into this a little bit more. Ethan Anderson was a guy that I thought had a really solid first month. And not to open up a whole can of worms and a whole discussion there about Ethan Anderson. That's not the point of this show. But I almost wonder if Ethan Anderson could just be promoted to Norfolk in the next couple of weeks. I know he hasn't had a ton of time in Double-A, but how much work do you want him getting behind the plate, I guess? And how high is his ceiling? I don't know the real answers to either of those questions, but I just feel like he's such an advanced hitter. How do you navigate that middle ground there? And like, would it just be best to just say, go to AAA and let's see if you can do it or not with the bat, and we'll figure out the defense later.
Yeah, honestly, he looks so refined at the plate. He's just a really professional at bat, looks really, really comfortable. And his numbers aren't mind-blowing, but if you just watch him, he looks like an adult in the lineup. And not to say like other guys in there aren't, but just, I don't know. He's very patient, but also gets his swings in. I can't put it into words, but I would not be shocked if he gets up to AAA before the halfway point of the year.
Really advanced hitter. I do think that the bat, if it's not ready right now, is very close to being ready at AAA. And really, I think that the whole decision on when to promote him is going to come down to the defense. If they're okay with him splitting time behind the plate with Silas Ardway and Creed Willems, knowing that he's going to have to play more first base, DH, outfield, then I say that you promote him sooner rather than later. Maybe at the end of the month, if he's still hitting this way, you bump him up. But if you are concerned about the innings behind the plate, you are going to have to figure out how to work through that logjam. Because I think that Creed Willems is going to be in AAA all year unless he's part of a trade package or unfortunately something bad happens in the majors and he's needed for an extended period of time. But yeah, the bat with Ethan Anderson, I feel like is very, very close to being AAA ready.
Love it. I'm just waiting for, I had to include him because the numbers are so good. And as I said, it's not a prospect ranking. Your prospect status isn't taken into account here. I'm surprised I haven't seen, maybe I'm not on Orioles Facebook. Maybe I should go over there and look at the Andrew Magno hype. When are people going to start demanding Andrew make his MLB debut with the Orioles out of that bullpen? But in all seriousness, he's having a fantastic year down there in Norfolk. But we saw a lot of him in spring training. So just keep doing your thing down there in AAA. But shout out. That was another reason why I was like, this gives us a chance to talk about guys like that who will probably be in our under the radar segment that we just don't have time for. We can never fit in. Another way to give some guys like that a little love.
Yeah, and another example of why Stuff Plus is important, but is certainly not the end-all, be-all when it comes to being successful as a pitcher, because he's got 3 average-ish pitches according to Stuff Plus, but he's been performing all year long really well. And meanwhile, Alex Pham and Ryan Long have eye-popping stuff plus numbers that have ERAs that are like 8, 9, 10. So, yeah, but very good shout out. Yeah, he's been really good. And left-handed pitchers are at a premium right now. So who knows? Maybe he does get a shot at the majors this year.
Yeah, be sure to check out that piece over at our Substack, OriolesandTheBirds.substack.com. There's that and more Orioles coverage there, as well as draft coverage, which will really be ramping up here over the next few months. And one thing you are going to be seeing more of on our podcast and over at Substack is FCL coverage, because their season got underway on Saturday. And it's a pretty interesting group of players down in the FCL who, at the time of our recording, are 2-0 to start off the year. We don't have a video feed this year, but we are going to have access to some StatCast data. So we look forward to working that into the show as appropriate this year. And I think looking at this roster, I don't know that there's a lot of true surprises based on how roster assignments have gone so far. But one thing I know jumps out at me with this group is that it feels like there's a lot of young hitters that could do some damage to the baseball. And we're going to talk about some of those players tonight. But then on the mound, Connor Gear is a guy that I think we're going to have our eyes on a lot over the next few months. So this is a pretty interesting roster.
It's very, very fun on the position player side, at the very least. And there's some pitchers on here that are super intriguing as well. Actually, it's pretty exciting overall. I'm seeing Esteban Lunes on this roster. You have Kevin Velasquez on the injured list, but it's only a 7-day injured list, so hopefully he's back soon. Isaiah Salinas, he's on the injured list too. Okay, that's fantastic.
All the intriguing arms are hurt.
So that's great. But yeah, back to the position players. Adriander Mejia is rehabbing for Delmarva in the FCL right now. You also got Omar Urbina on the injured list. And Christian Astudillo is an interesting bat behind the plate. Joe Snyder Orellana, pardon the pronunciation, first time trying that. I noticed in the first game he pitched 1 2/3 innings and struck out like 3 or 4 batters. And I was like looking at him, and he's a catcher. And then he played defense behind the plate in game 2. I don't know if he's our Ohtani back there, 21 years old, signed after leaving a different organization, or if they're just trying to use him as a pitcher. And hey, has catching experience. Might as well throw him late in games if you need him. I don't know. That is something I'm keeping an eye out for. But continuing on, man, this roster on the position player side is super loaded. Jose Pena, unfortunately, on the 7-day injured list, but Emilio Sanchez, Jamon Noel, Jaden Loray, Joe Philip Guzman, a rare high school undrafted free agent who's off to a pretty good start. Elvin Garcia, Wilfred De La Cruz, Hector Campuzano off to a really hot start. Cam Lee, Starlin Miasis. I'm just naming guys, but it's really fun. It's exciting. See these names popping up in the box scores in the first 2 games.
I'm interested, is this one of the most expensive FCL teams the Orioles have ever had? Because you got Wilfred De La Cruz at over $2 million, Elvin Garcia got $500,000, Jaden Loray got over $500,000, Jose Pena got $1 million, Emilio Sanchez got $1.3 million. I think that's it for the big signings.
Until next year when all this expensive class gets there, plus some guys get held back.
True. But yeah, the FCL I love, because this was the kind of like the lost level. You go to the DSL and like you have the YouTube streams where, yeah, it's not the greatest visuals, but you at least get pitch velo, you get exit velo data, you get some data there, and you get an idea. You even get like the little strike zone box there, so you could see like, are guys just missing, or they just have no control, like what's going on. You can put context behind some of the numbers and things you see, but then they just kind of disappear for a year or two in the FCL because there's no stream, there's no data, there's no nothing. And then I was not expecting that opening day on Saturday, because I was like, oh, well, that makes sense because we got StatCast data for Orioles spring training games this year. We're now getting it for the FCL games, which is awesome. So we at least have that to go off of and help put a lot of context. So great.
When I saw that, I'm like, oh my God. I actually sat there on game day and watched like 4 innings just looking at the data of Connor Gear, 90 to 92. I'm like, oh my God, I can see the pitch types. I can see the velocities. This is incredible. Sorry.
Yeah, this is where we nerd out. We got get our depression out with talking about the major league team. Now we get to nerd out. Like Harlan Knott pitched today, Monday. So a couple days ago, if you're listening to this on the podcast feed, he pitched Monday, and you look at his box score line, and you're like, well, this is what, like 5 innings, 1 run, no walks and a strikeout. And you're like, all right, young kid, that's a good line. But then you look, he throws 88 miles an hour with like 12 inches of IVB, like just no swing and miss there. He had like 3 whiffs. So you can put a whole lot of better context behind these player performances. But yeah, the pitching side, outside of Connor Gear and maybe Esteban Luna, it's a lot of these guys are undrafted free agents the Orioles just signed in like the last week or two. Zach Clampton, Jason Shockley. Jason Shockley was a catcher at Richmond. He's transitioning to pitcher. Brandon Parks, Anthony Steele, like all these guys are undrafted free agents the Orioles just signed to try to fill out some innings in the FCL. But yeah, it's the bats that I'm really excited to see, especially guys like, I know we're going to talk about a couple individually, but some guys I know we won't touch on. Wilfred De La Cruz, again, signing for over $2 million for the Cubs, comes over last year in the DSL and was really good. The walk machine, 11 doubles, 3 triples, but there's the initial scouting report on Wilfred De La Cruz when he signed with the Cubs was a lot of people believe that there was some real power in his 6'2" frame. So how much power do we see? We get to see the exit velo numbers this year for Wilfred De La Cruz. Does he become one of the next big top shortstops in the system or not? Excited to see that. And yeah, like Jaden Loray, Cam Lee, like who are these guys? Obviously, we got to sit down with Jaden Loray, check out that interview. But like Jaden Loray noted for the hit tool, but he said himself, none of his tools really pop off the page, but they all show up between the lines when the game starts. But okay, like what's the profile here? Who are you as a player? We're going to get a much better idea. Cam Lee's kind of the same thing. Like, is he a power hitting outfielder? He comes around the JUCO ranks. Is he a power hitting outfielder? Are you a speed and defense guy? Like, we're going to get a pretty clear view of who these guys are over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, that's what's really exciting for us is being able to, the more information we have, the better idea we can put together in our head of what these guys' skill sets are. Yeah, very good development this year for FCL having the StatCast.
What would you do if your online store converted 36% more shoppers? You could take 36% more vacation.
Another pina colada? Yes, please.
Open a new retail location with 36% more square feet.
Fantastic.
Hire 36% more help.
You're hired and you're hired.
Shopify has the world's best converting checkout, up to 36% better than other e-commerce platforms. What you do with those extra sales is up to you. Switch to Shopify today at shopify.com/listen and get a $1 trial. Shopify.com/listen.
Mother's Day is a time to appreciate the people who hold us to a high standard. At Ritual, we apply that same philosophy to your health. We are a mom-founded company on a mission to bring a high standard to the supplement industry through traceable science and clinical research you can actually trust. We've done the hard work, investing in gold standard clinical research and traceable ingredients so you can feel confident in your routine. When we say traceable, that means you can see what it is, where it's from, and why it's in there. This year, skip the flowers and gift the moms in your life or yourself a new ritual. Whether it's our flagship Essential Multivitamin or our 3-in-1 gut support, Ritual is the science-backed routine that actually shows up for you. Experience a high standard of science-backed health with 35% off when you bundle at ritual.com/podcast. That's 35% off at ritual.com/podcast. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see what Jaden Loray can contribute this year. And one thing that jumped out at me in our interview was you got the sense he really takes pride in having versatility, being able to go wherever they need him on the field. And I think that that's going to be key this year because this is a really crowded infield where I think you have some guys that are not necessarily going to stick at shortstop long term. But let's face it, the Orioles like to get their younger infielders reps at shortstop. I think even if it's clear they're not going to end up there, Joshua Lorenzo jumps out at me as an example of that. So between Wilfred De La Cruz, Jose Pena, Emilio Sanchez, whose defense I've always kind of liked, Jaden Loray, Damone Newell, Elvin Garcia, you're really going to have to move some guys around, not to mention Hector Camposano, who's kind of jumping out at us a little bit early on. So it's going to be really interesting to see how the infield is set up game to game because I think guys are going to have to play a little bit out of position sometimes to get these bats in the lineup, because there are, between guys with good bat-to-ball skills like Loray, and then players who've got a little bit of power like Elvin Garcia, who's shown that so far, and then Wilfred De La Cruz, who we suspect has it in the tank. You're going to want as many of those bats in the lineup as you can each game. Yeah,
and get these pitchers healthy, the ones we want to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say, too, just kind of as an observation, that this roster has a lot of players that were in the mix for our preseason top 50 but didn't make it. Starlin Mieses, I think, was in the mix at one point. Lisandro Sanchez was originally not on the list, but then joined it late after the Orioles traded Wellington Arcina to the Diamondbacks. So there's a chance for some of these guys to be real risers as the season goes on.
Big breakout potential here. And like we talked about a little bit on the last episode, in Delmarva, starting to see it with the Steven Martinez's and others, DJ Layton, but a lot of these guys that we're talking about here in the FCL, either before the season is over or when the season is over, are going to end up in Delmarva and have a couple months of run there to try to continue their breakouts.
And if some of these bigger names, Emilio Sanchez, like you mentioned, I do remember us talking about that defense when he was in the DSL, getting some fun highlights there. He's had 2 years in the DSL offensively, sub 700 OPS, but he's still 19 years old. But if a guy like that comes out and really struggles in the FCL and we're not seeing big exit velos and there's really nothing in the StatCast data pop in, I feel like maybe that's one thing where you can say, I don't know, $1.3 million signing bonus, but I don't know if he's going to live up to that hype, even though he's still going to be 20 by the end of the year. But if guys like Jaden Loray or some of these other players, Wilfred De La Cruz or Cam Lee or Mieses or Sanchez, if they struggle this year, I'm just going back to Braylon Whitaker and DJ Layton, and they were awful or did not play at all in the FCL last year, and look what they're doing in Delmarva. So it's a good thing about, there's a lot of like 18, 19-year-old kids on this FCL roster, and if things don't go their way this first year, no time to write any of these kids off so early, because clearly the Orioles could push them up to low A next year, and they could find their footing pretty quickly.
Absolutely. And with that, now we will head into our final segment of the night. Last Call, brought to you by Checker Spot Brewing, located 1421 Ridley Street. Checker Spot is not far from Camden Yards, making it the perfect place for a pre- or post-game drink this season. And if you happen to not have tickets to the game or the Orioles are out of town, Checker Spot is actually a great place to watch the action on television. Plenty of good TVs, as well as food and drink. They are open 7 days a week, so be sure to check them out at 1421 Ridley Street in South Baltimore. That's Checker Spot Brewing. And now this Last Call segment is probably going to be a little bit longer than our normal Last Call segments, because here we're each going to highlight our pick to click in the FCL. So we each got one player that we could assign as our breakout candidate for this season. And these players, some of them we've talked about before at various lengths. Others we're just kind of starting to get to know a little bit. So it's going to be a pretty interesting mix of players that we highlight here in this final segment. And to start us off, I want to go over to Bob with his pick.
Yeah, I went with Jamon Noel, just because he was a guy that we saw repeat the DSL last year and just improve across the board. And we knew coming in to his first season that he's a switch hitter, smooth swing, like contact with some room to grow. And he can steal bases. He plays pretty good defense. We're not like eyes on to know exactly how good all this stuff is, but everything looked good on paper. Disappointed in that first season, came back and performed really well. And this season so far, in 2 games at the time of this recording, he's 3 for 6 with a run and 2 walks and 2 stolen bases. So picking up right where he left off last year. And that would be a 129 WRC plus in the DSL at 18 years old, 235 plate appearances, had nearly identical walk and strikeout numbers, 20.4% strikeout, 21.7% walk rate. So walked more than he struck out, stole 45 bases, 9 doubles, 3 triples, 3 home runs. Not a ton of power shown in the ISO, but just it's there. And to see him come up in the FCL, and the Orioles are batting him leadoff the first 2 games of the year, so that speaks to a lot of confidence that the team has in his abilities to continue to do that. I think he has a lot of opportunity to break out. We've seen switch hitting infielders do it before. Ben Cosme's not switch hitter, but you get my point. Aaron Estrada as well. Like maybe Jamon Noel is the next in that lineage of Orioles prospects that pop in the low minors. And yeah, I'm very intrigued to see if he can even do similar to what he did in a DSL in the next step at the FCL. He's one of those guys that I do think could end up in Delmarva before the year's out, or at the very least after the FCL season ends, and get a couple months more experience in low A.
I like Noel a lot just because, like you mentioned, the growth. I mean, going from a 30% strikeout rate down to a 20% strikeout rate, going from 20 stolen bases to 45 stolen bases. And even another fun note, if you're looking for a fun storyline to follow, I had to find this tweet real quick. Jeff Duda, he covers international baseball. Good follow over there on social media. But he's been following Jamon Noel pretty closely because, as he noted last year when Noel was playing well in the DSL, Jamon Noel was born in Jamaica. And he is the only, well, I don't know, maybe this changed since this year's international signing class, but at least last year at the time, he was the only active minor leaguer from Jamaica playing in minor league baseball. So just a fun little extra storyline there for Jamon Noel to cheer him on and get him to the major leagues.
Very cool.
Yeah, I remember Newell's 2024 season, and it was kind of up and down. He'd have stretches where he looked really good at the plate, but then the strikeouts would get away from him. Still finished with a 108 WRC plus, and I remember going into last year thinking, could they decide just to bump Newell up because they feel like he's better than some of their alternatives, and maybe he's a guy that has to repeat the FCL. Instead, he repeated the DSL, and that was absolutely the right call because that allowed him to bring his strikeout rate way down. The walks went up. We saw him, I think, make more consistent contact than we saw the year before. And that's just led to growth across the board, like you guys said. So I feel like there is a lot of potential here for at least some sort of interesting utility profile. Maybe it turns out to be a little bit more than that, but he's definitely a guy I got my eye on, not to mention only 19 years old. So he will play all season as a 19-year-old. So if he's able to make that push for Delmarva later this summer, that's going to be a pretty big step up for him.
And still, to hear that Jamon Noel is 19 and wow, he's only 19. And then Steven Martinez was like 17 last year in low A. Just crazy, the ages of some of these kids. And it's something I have to constantly check myself on when I'm thinking about these lower level younger guys, about the age to level and why. Don't get too frustrated. This isn't the Orioles. This isn't the Major League Orioles where you got outscored 39-10 in a 4-game series against the Yankees in New York. These are young kids who are developing, and don't get too frustrated. Have some patience.
Go over to Nick now for his pick.
I'll go with mine. I was just going. One other note I forgot: one of the hitting coaches down there in the FCL now is Zach Cole, who was the high A hitting coach I think the last couple of years. So that's not a demotion for him, obviously, but I think that's a fantastic little extra help for some of these young bats. I mean, I think a guy like Cole, who's been coaching in the at least high A level for the last couple of years, can impart some fun little extra knowledge for a lot of these hitters and get them even more prepared when they make that jump to full season ball. But my guy, I'm going Hector Campusano, and I'm going to admit when I was looking at this initial roster when it came out the other day, and you look at the outfield and you see Cam Lee, Starling Mieses, Lisandro Sanchez as the outfielders, I'm like, that's a fun outfield. That's a fantastic outfield. Yes, a lot of these infielders, like Zach talked about, they're going to mix in, but those three guys are going to be your primary outfielders. But then Lisandro Sanchez starts the year on the IL, and I don't know if that opened up a role for Campusano or it was Campusano's job from the start, but Hector Campusano has started the first couple of games here a year down the FCL, and he's got opening day on Saturday. He had batted balls of 105.7 miles per hour and 101 miles per hour. And on Monday, he went 103 miles per hour. And like these are base hits. These aren't just, he hits the ball hard, but you know, whatever Ben McDonald was going on about the other day on one of the broadcasts, he's hitting the ball hard and they're falling in for base hits. So 3 hits in 2 games. Surprising EVs, just because you look at his DSL numbers, 89 games in the DSL, just 13 extra base hits and just 2 home runs. Both of those home runs came in 2024. So he hit no home runs last year. And you look at 78 walks to 55 strikeouts in 2 years in the DSL. So I'm thinking, all right, this is a light hitting infielder, outfielder, utility type player. He's going to get on base. He's not going to strike out. Maybe in a couple of years, he's the next, Michael Hernandez, Fernando Peguero, the bounce around guy who can play multiple positions and hold a place in a lineup for you at whatever level on a given night. But I don't know. After these first couple of days, if you're hitting the ball that hard and performing that well, it's a very small sample size, but I'm intrigued now. And this is a perfect example of, I had my thoughts about Campusano just scouting the box score, which is one thing I hate doing more than anything else. And now we've got a little bit data here on him. The evaluation might be changing a little bit, especially if he keeps this up as the season progresses.
I did note that last year he improved as the season went on. His walk rate to strikeout rate was pretty good and improved the same way. So he was a guy that I had in the back of my mind, but definitely not like multiple 100 plus mile per hour batted ball base hits. So yeah, definitely raised him up the ladder as far as my attention span in the FCL.
Yeah, I'm definitely had my eye on him, especially after he posted those impressive exit velos on Saturday. The thing that I'm curious to see is that his numbers improved across the board last year at the plate, despite the fact that his ground ball percentage actually went up. So hopefully that proves to kind of be a fluke and he gets that back down a little bit this year. But the way that he has made contact so far, I think there's definitely something here to keep your eye on, especially because, as Nick touched on, there is that defensive versatility that's going to be really key for this roster. I'll go over to my guy now, and it was somebody that 2 years ago was starting to emerge maybe as a little bit of a breakout candidate in the lower levels of the farm system. That's Elvin Garcia, who signed for a $500,000 signing bonus as part of the January 2024 international free agent class. Early returns on Garcia were great. He put up very strong numbers in the DSL, got the bump up to the FCL last year, and injuries limited him to just 31 games. And his results at the plate during that time period were not good. 234 with just 6 extra base hits across the board. He walked at a 15% rate, but the strikeouts jumped up to 36.5%. That, as I mentioned, though, there was an injury. It was a hand injury. So we were hoping that this year Garcia would be able to come out healthy. And this is a guy that one thing I really want to see is the exit velos, because Eric Longenhagen at Fangraphs has noted some positive things about Garcia's power in the past. Jaden Loray, when he was on our show last week, talked about how hard Garcia had been hitting the ball in the build-up to the FCL season. So if the hand injury is behind him, I feel like Garcia could be in line for a real offensive breakout this year. He's one of those guys that, as I mentioned earlier, going to be affected a little bit by the number of infielders they can have. So he's going to have to move around a little bit defensively. But for me, if the strikeout rate comes down, he shows that he's over the hand injury, and we see the power start to come around, he's going to go from a guy that was not on our preseason top 50 list to, I think, at least a solid top 35, top 40, if not more.
Yeah, I think more, honestly. I think the more I think about it, and just obviously he got off to a good start. I think he's 3 for 7 with a double, 1 walk, 1 strikeout in 2 games. Obviously, tiny sample size. But just last year, I think he just tried to play through something, and it didn't work because it's just his numbers were not even resembling the player that he showed in a DSL. And then the reports that we saw out of spring training about a year plus ago. And hopefully he's healthy. It seems like he is, and he can come here. I think he's a guy that's not going to last the entire season in the FCL. I think he's going to be a guy that gets that midseason promotion to Delmarva. Just a gut feeling. I think he's, again, only 19 years old, 19 in 3 months. So he'll be 19 all the way into 2027, the beginning of. So plenty of room for him still to live up to that hype that Eric Longenhagen and honestly that I expected him to do last year. I think we're going to finally see it this year.
Yeah, that was the reason I had him in the very back end of my personal top 50 list to start the year, because that hand injury report. I felt like, all right, well, if Eric Longenhagen, he's not just writing this based off, looking at synergy or whatever. Like he said in the report, he was on the backfields at Sarasota watching Garcia and said he was so much bigger than what he was when he signed, and the power was real. So like, all right, well, I'm going to buy that report. And he was also the numbers, like you mentioned, he was a Dominican Summer League All-Star his first year. We learned there's a hand injury. I'm going to sneak him back into my top 50, and let's see. If he has a good start to the year in the FCL, then he can gradually start to move his way back up. But this guy got $500,000 just a couple years ago from the Orioles. And yeah, so far, early returns are pretty good in these first couple of games. Like you mentioned, I'm pretty stoked to see what Elvin Garcia does this year. All these shortstops. And this is like, yeah, this helps the depth of the farm system. If more of these guys start to pop, especially these middle infielders, it's good for the depth of the farm system. But it's also, there are some guys here. Hopefully the Orioles at the major level can turn things around. And when you're looking at the trade deadline, like, these are some guys that you can dip into and help get a trade over the edge. If Elvin Garcia is really performing that well and turning things around, like, that's how I'm also looking at a lot of these guys down there in the FCL. So these guys stepping up and coming out on top this year is important for the health of this organization in many different ways.
One point I wanted to bring up just before we wrap up is that this is still relatively new, the FCL season starting as early as it does. Just a few years ago, it didn't start until I think like late May, early June. Now it's up closer to the start of full season ball. It ends earlier, but starts earlier. One thing that I think we saw last year as part of that is that the Orioles were aggressive early on with some promotions. Guys like Nate George, Luis Almeida, Joshua Lorenzo got the bump up pretty quickly. So there could be those kind of players this year. So stay tuned for that, because if some of these guys get off to hot starts, especially they've had FCL time before, or maybe they had a couple of years as a DSL before they got up to Sarasota, they could be candidates for promotions to Delmarva sooner rather than later. And with that, that does it for our coverage this week. We will be back next week. In the meantime, you can check out our many social media channels, including Facebook, Instagram, Threads, X, TikTok, YouTube, and Twitch. We're also over at Blue Sky. And as I mentioned at the top of the show, we are at Substack, OriolesOnTheVerge.substack.com. You can check out Nick's piece about the all-prospect team from April and a whole lot more over there. And while you're browsing around the internet, be sure to head over to Patreon.com and sign up to become a member today. The $3, $5, or $10 levels have access to bonus weekly coverage from Bob, Nick, and myself, monthly updates to our top 50 prospects list, access to Patreon-exclusive channels within our Discord community, and a whole lot more. That's over at Patreon.com. For Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens and Zach Spedden, you've been listening to Orioles on the Verge, part of the Believe Podcast Network.
Mother's Day is a time to appreciate the people who hold us to a high standard. At Ritual, we apply that same philosophy to your health. We are a mom-founded company on a mission to bring a high standard to the supplement industry through traceable science and clinical research you can actually trust. We've done the hard work, investing in gold standard clinical research and traceable ingredients so you can feel confident in your routine. When we say traceable, that means you can see what it is, where it's from, and why it's in there. This year, skip the flowers and gift the moms in your life or yourself a new ritual. Whether it's our flagship Essential Multivitamin or our 3-in-1 Gut Support, Ritual is the science-backed routine that actually shows up for you. Experience a high standard of science-backed health with 35% off when you bundle at ritual.com/podcast. That's 35% off at ritual.com/podcast. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.